Nowadays, when a new Walt Disney animated feature opens in theaters, the whole world knows about it. That's because of advertising and promotion and, of course, merchandising. But even back in the 1930s, the little silly Symphonies short subjects had their share of merchandise out and about, and they helped promote these films and make people more aware of them. And to gather some of the best goodies from that period together, we've come to the source, the Walt Disney Archives, and we're talking, of course, to Dave Smith, who founded this archive 31 years ago. It might be surprising to some people that there was merchandising for short subjects that sort of came and went, didn't have the staying power of a feature film. Tell us a little about that.
Well, I think that's very true. The Mickey Mouse merchandising started in 1929, just a year after Mickey was created, and became very popular. But the very early Silly Symphonies, which also started in 1929, did not have merchandising. They didn't have that lasting quality, as you say, but one Silly Symphony did come along that did have that lasting quality, and that was in 1933 when we made Three Little Pigs. That was a film that was intensely popular. In fact, today you could probably say that it's the most popular cartoon of all time. But Three Little Pigs would stay in a theater for weeks and weeks and weeks, even when the main feature would change. And there was one theater in New York City where they started putting a beard on the pigs, and each week they'd make the beard longer and longer, and pretty soon they had a pretty long beard on those pigs.
Plus there was a hit song people were singing.
There was an extremely popular hit song.
Who's afraid of the big bad wolf? Big bad wolf, big bad wolf. Who's afraid of the big bad wolf?
So this was a cartoon that people remembered, and immediately the company started licensing merchandise for Three Little Pigs, and there was a tremendous amount of merchandise for Three Little Pigs.
And we have some of it here.
Here's a china teapot of the Three Little Pigs.
And nice quality, too.
Right, right.
Patriot China.
Patriot China was
Made in America.
made by a company called Salem China Company, actually. Patriot was their label.
What other kinds of items do we have here?
Pick up the toothbrush holder over
this
there.
is fun.
This is a fun item. This was made by American Pottery, which was a very well-known producer of Disney figurines in the 1940s. So this was done actually a little later.
It's very characteristic of the practical pig to be saying, "You'll be sorry,
That's
you better
right.
brush your teeth." So it's very much in character, isn't it? That's great.
And here is a box of Three Little Pigs playing cards.
And there's the wolf inside a little window there with tallies and scorecards.
So hundreds and hundreds of different items for the Three Little Pigs. There you can see three china figurines of the pigs that were made in Japan. This one is bisque. This is a toothbrush holder also. There's holes here for the toothbrushes. And it's made out of bisque, which is a chalky type of ceramic that was very popular in Japan. And they made a lot of these bisque figures in Japan of the Disney characters, but I don't think many of them were sold over in Japan. They were made for export to the United States.
And these survive, actually. You do see these at antique shows,
Yes,
don't you?
you
These-
do.
These are around.
So there must have been thousands and thousands of them sold. And this is one of the rarest pieces, a clock from the Three Little Pigs. And of course, it's not the Three Little Pigs that's the main character on here. It's the Big Bad Wolf. And that's a little surprising because today we've gotten interested in the villain characters from the Disney films, but that's not always been true. I mean, during the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and 70s, the villains were not popular characters, so it's a little surprising to find a villain character as the key character on this clock.
Well, he certainly made an impact, didn't he?
He did. His head bounces up and down as it ticks. And,
That's great.
But there's even a more rarer piece, which also has the Big Bad Wolf, and that's a wristwatch. I think I've only seen maybe 2 of these in the 31 years that I've been here at the archives.
Wow. And look at all the detailing, too.
Right. And notice on the band here are little metal cutouts of the characters that are placed on the leather band.
Exceptional. Plus, I mean, they're all depicted there on the face. Wonderful. Who made this watch?
Ingersoll. Ingersoll was the licensee for Disney watches back in the 1930s.
And how much would that have sold for?
The first Mickey Mouse watch sold for $2.95, so I would assume this would be about the same thing, and,
Wow.
and you'd be talking many, many, many hundreds, if not thousands of dollars today.
Gosh. Now, that sort of primed the pump, didn't it? Once Three Little Pigs merchandise started to get out into the marketplace, I guess the licensees started taking a closer look at the Silly
Yes.
Symphonies.
That's always true. When you have a real hit film, licensees figure they've missed the boat. They should have been in there ahead of time. And so from then on, they try to guess in advance what is going to be the popular film. And they want to have their merchandise out as soon after the release of the film as possible. I mean, if the film comes out, people are thinking about it when they leave the theater, and if they can go down to their local 10-cent store and buy a figurine that day, that's great. It didn't happen too much. Most of this merchandise was done after the fact. Snow White in 1937 was really the first film that had an extensive merchandising campaign all set up when the film opened.
Dwarfs' names fit their personalities. This pompous-looking individual is Doc, the self-appointed leader of the group. And this little fellow is bashful. He's secretly in love with Snow White. And this funny face is Sneezy. He has hay fever. And old droopy eyes is called Sleepy. And Happy here with the beaming smile. And old Sourpuss here is Grumpy, the woman hater. And last but not least is Dopey. He's nice, but sort of silly.
Now, you have a book here that I think is the most beautiful of all. We have many to show today.
This is a general Silly Symphony book. It's the, as you notice here, Mickey Mouse presents the Silly Symphonies. Walt was always worried in the early days of the Silly Symphonies that people knew Mickey Mouse, but they didn't know the Silly Symphonies. And he very often would stick the name of Mickey Mouse up there as the presenter of these Silly Symphonies, even though poor Mickey had nothing to do with them whatsoever. But this is a pop-up book, and it's got some really nice pop-ups in
Oh,
it.
isn't that lovely? That's perfect. These are elaborate and beautiful. Oh, look at King Neptune. Perfect. Wonderful.
These books were very popular, and they weren't expensive. The Mickey Mouse pop-up was 75 cents. This one was $2.
Oh, that's a deluxe item. Actually, in the middle of the Depression, $2 is a considerable amount, but that's why they gave you a lot for your money,
Sure,
I guess, in that
sure.
book. Once there was a collection of Silly Symphonies to draw on, I guess, in color as well. Maybe color had a
Color had a
impact
big
on this.
impact, and of course, the first color cartoon was Flowers and Trees in 1932, and that is not one that lent itself to merchandising, or maybe perhaps they hadn't thought of doing their merchandising that early, but shortly after that, they made a cartoon called The Lullaby Land, and we've got one merchandise item from that. It's just a framed picture from Lullaby Land.
For a nursery wall, perhaps,
Yes,
or something
yes.
like that.
That's what a lot of this merchandise would have been done for, is for the nursery.
And it says here on the tag, which of course does show Mickey, a Walt Disney luminous picture glows in the dark.
The thing that's really interesting to me, Leonard, are the merchandise items that deal with cartoons that were just one-shots. They were out there for a short period of time. They're little remembered today, but you can still find a few pieces of merchandise from those cartoons.
Give us some examples.
I'll give you some examples. Elmer Elephant and Tilly Tiger here. We're in a Silly Symphony called Elmer Elephant. Here's another Elmer Elephant. This one is actually soap that you could use while you're taking a bath.
Fortunately, nobody used, so you have it in mint condition there.
It's rare to find it in good condition because this soap tends to turn brittle through the years and crack and break.
See the funny little bunnies. See the
Funny Little Bunnies. Those two pull toys there, and this box of soap here also is Funny Little Bunnies. One of the rarest pieces here is this one.
Nothing so peculiar as a penguin, unless it's you and I.
We made a cartoon called Peculiar Penguins, and this may not even have been an authorized item. We did no merchandise about peculiar penguins in this country, but we did find this in Mexico. And so somebody at least did a merchandise item of Peter Penguin. That was his name.
And here's some nice games. These are beautiful boxes,
Right.
too.
The Pied Piper game there is a kind of a unique item because I can't think of another piece of Disney merchandise featuring the Pied Piper. And the other one, of course, is Red Riding Hood, which was one of the sequels to the Three Little Pigs.
And then there are these lovely Mazda lamps. Now, these two still turn up from time to time, but you don't always see them this way with the original packaging.
And you don't find the silly Symphonies ones as often. There's a set of Mickey Mouse Christmas lights that do turn up quite frequently, but the silly Symphony ones are quite a bit rarer. And finding them in their original box is nice.
One of the things that I can't help but take note of is the artwork itself on all of this merchandise, and certainly in the books and even in the packaging here, is perfect. This was not done by some advertising artist for hire. Tell us how the artwork would be prepared for some of these items.
We had a number of publicity artists here at the Disney studio. The primary one in the 1930s was a man by the name of Hank Porter. And it was their job in many cases to do the artwork for all the movie posters. And mentioning the movie posters, I should say that that's one of the few ways that the Silly Symphonies were advertised to the public. Movie theaters would put up a regular poster in their window. And as people drove by, they would see that there was a Silly Symphony playing there. The cartoons didn't really have advertising in the newspapers or the magazines, but you did see the posters. And those same poster artists were the ones who very often were called upon to do the designs for the books, for the games, and for the merchandise. If they didn't design it themselves, they certainly had the design sent to them so they could approve them and make sure they looked right. We had a merchandising manager in the 1930s by the name of Kay Kamen, and Kamen was a perfectionist. He really insisted that any piece of Disney merchandise look exactly like it should. I think that's one of the reasons why all of these pieces are so collectible today, because they were so beautifully designed.
I suppose one way of extending the life of these cartoons, or maybe even heralding their arrival, would be the comic strip that was published for a while. This is really rare.
Back in the 1930s, for about 8 or 10 years, we had a series of Silly Symphony comic strips. These are the Sunday strips, so they would be, that's why they're in color here, and they would be in your Sunday newspaper each week. And the Silly Symphonies series covered a whole group of different topics, whether it's the Tortoise and the Hare, or Three Little Pigs, or the Robber Kitten, or whichever. But each story would go on for a number of weeks, and then they would move on to the story of another.
So it might cause you to be looking forward to that particular one when it came to your neighborhood theater.
Exactly. There was also Good Housekeeping magazine, the monthly magazine, had a Disney page in every single issue. And during the 30s, when the Silly Symphonies were very popular, they would base a lot of these pages on one of the Silly Symphonies that was currently coming out into the theaters. And people find those old magazines and cut out the page, and I've seen a number of them framed on people's walls.
Well, they're very attractively done.
They're beautiful art, yes.
Well, there's a good example. That leads us into something else, that some people think, they read about auctions, they read about enormous prices being paid for rare Disney collectibles, but there's still things to be collected, even from the 1930s, that relate to Silly Symphonies or Mickey and Donald, that anyone can afford if you're just ingenious enough to know what to look for. Give us some tips of what do you think might be fun for starters, let's say.
I think one thing that's not really raised in value as much as it should be are books. There are a lot of different books that have been published with the Silly Symphony stories. You can still find them in used bookstores, and the prices aren't usually that bad. A lot of the figurines were done in such huge quantity that they usually aren't too high priced either. But you get to some of the games and the Christmas lights and the pop-up book and the soap and the clock and things like that, then you're talking a higher price.
A lot of these items, as you've already indicated, were so popular that there's a reason many of them survived. They were really circulated. They were out and about, and in the thousands, in the tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands.
Well, when you think of the books, for example, often these would be bought for a library, and the library would circulate these for a decade or so after the cartoon came out. So it kept that cartoon awareness in the public's mind.
Dave, do you still hunt for items to add to the archive, and are you ever surprised by what you do find?
Yes, I'm always surprised if I go around to a flea market or an antique show. Very often I'm going to see something I have never seen before, and that's because there was just so much Disney merchandise made during the early years. We are not going out and searching for a lot today. We have a good representative sampling in the Disney archives now, and that's all we need, really. We're not trying to get one of everything.
Do you still get a kick out of all this?
Oh, I certainly do, and especially the Silly Symphonies. They were always my favorites of all of the Disney cartoons that I had seen, and I can't resist today turning on the video recorder and watching another one, because they are such wonderful films.
Well, that's why we're happy to gather some of our favorites onto this disc, and I hope we'll introduce them to some new people who haven't seen them before. That'd be fun. Thanks for joining us today, and thanks for showing all these goodies.